Welcome to Dr. M Wadcast, a wadcast with a mission, connecting continuous improvement professionals across the world.
Okay.
Okay, Bob, let me do Kaizen my episode 2. So this part is the end of part 1 of episode 2, and then we can move on to part 2 of episode 2. Go ahead and ask questions. We will publish it separately, part 1 and part 2. Question, Bob, you're available, open to all of you all to discuss.
Yes,
Q&A,
sure.
Q&A. That's the part 2, episode 2. Go ahead.
From Ashok, he's asking that is there a known list of concerns CEOs, senior leaders, exist that can help bring the gorilla in the room to be collectively addressed?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question? I didn't get the first part of it.
Sorry, I'm just maybe too fast. Is there a known list of concerns CEOs exist that can help bring the gorilla in the room to be collectively addressed?
Raj, that is a question from whom?
Ashok.
Yeah.
It has come in the chat boxes.
Yeah. The CEOs don't publicly present these questions that they have. You have to deduce it from their actions and from other sources. And that's what I have done in my various writings recently to get at, what are those concerns? And there are many. As I said, there's this, the concerns are embedded in the various preconceptions, economic, social, political, and so forth. And a lot of it has to do with social concerns. If I do this, how am I going to look in the eyes of my peer group? They're not doing this. Why should I bother? I'll look weird in relation to them. So a lot of this revolves around social concerns, believe it or not. And they're not explicit. They're not often expressed explicitly. They sort of run subconsciously. Because otherwise you'd say, look at all the benefits of this lean stuff or TPS or progressive management or whatever you want to call it, right? It's undeniable. Yet most aren't interested in it. So there's what else is going on? Again, it's not those superficial reasons. You've got to dig down deep to get at it. Other thoughts or other questions? Raj, do you see other things in the chat here?
Can I ask you a quick question, Bob?
Sure.
It's Dave here in Japan. I've learned TPS before anything to do with lean, being in Japan for 29 years. And on the topic of Kaizen and Kaikaku, Kaizen is something that everybody gets involved in, and everybody from the baseline operators to the very top has to be in on Kaizen for it to succeed. But in the Japanese context in companies here, Kaikaku is something that mid-level managers and up have to be concerned about. It's a larger transformation. It's a big change of direction of the company, maybe the products you make, the markets you make into. It's not a concern that, operator positions or line workers would ever have to concern themselves with. It's a word that's thrown around in a lot in the lean world, but it's not something that operators have to be concerned about here in Japan. Their job is to produce and come up with ideas for improvement, Kaizen ideas. Is it different in the West, Bob? I'm guessing it's different.
I mean, I think in the West it would be referred to more as a business strategy. Change in business strategy. So you have your corporate strategies. What market do I want to be in? I want to be in the automobile market. Okay, that's fixed. That's stays for a long time. But then what's my business strategy? Small cars, trucks, whatever. And so that would be more in the equivalent to the kaikaku realm.
Mhm.
Now, an automaker might say autos are doomed because of, for whatever reason, and so we want to get into, change our corporate strategy, which would be to get into,
Yeah.
I don't know, home building, prefabricated homes or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
so
see.
kaikaku in the Japanese sense would align more with change in business strategy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Bob,
Yeah.
why do these preconceptions exist? Meaning, how did they come about?
It's just tradition of, how to run a business. And these
Default
traditions,
human condition?
yeah, I mean, these traditions start early. I think from having read one of my books that we have managers at a very early age in our life. Our first managers are our parents. Our second managers are our teachers. Our third managers are our friends' parents. Or before that, our second managers are our friends' parents. The next one is our teachers. The next one is our coaches and, when we're 7 or 8 years old playing sports. Our next managers are our priest. And, so, and they all teach you to think a certain way and do things a certain way. And then you get educated, you go through high school, or maybe you go to college. Those are other managers you have teaching you how to think in a certain way. And then you get into business, and now you're in an economic hierarchy, which essentially in a market-based economy, you need an income to live. And so whatever the boss says, you more or less. And the boss's preconceptions are, formulated early on and so on. And because they're, because it's tradition, people see it as being valuable, and therefore it should continue. And they don't say, when is a tradition no longer useful? And when is a tradition still useful and should continue? People don't ask those kind of questions because they have the whatever is right. If you had the attitude whatever is wrong, you would ask those questions and would say, okay, here's a tradition. Is it still serving our needs? Yes. Okay, let's keep using it. But let's not forget to ask the question down the road, could be 10 or 20 years, is it still serving a useful need? Another tradition? No, it's not serving the need. Let's stop doing that.
Bob, Dr. M here, just carrying forward what Catherine said, and the topic being that we should do Kaizen. And doing Kaizen does change the preconceptions, because coming from the clinical psychology, there is parenting as you narrated, but there is a phase in which we can reparent them. And rightly said, as you said, if you make Kaizen fun and joy, which is good for the child ego stage, incidentally, there's a little professor in the child ego state initially that gets adapted. So reparenting gives you an opportunity of fun and joy to remove certain preconceived notions. So taking the clue from what both of you said, Kaizen is one of the routes in which you can remove this preconception. What's your take on that, Bob? Catherine?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's some people refer to it as rewilding. So if you have a place, a town that's full of buildings and so forth, and you tear some down and plant trees and so forth, you're rewilding that area. So we need to rewild ourselves, not just rewire, rewild ourselves to the 9-year-olds, when we were experimenting and having fun and trying things and asking questions. If you go to my chatbot and ask how old is Bob Emiliani, it'll tell you he's 9 years old. we trained it to have that answer. That's why.
I say this from my Gemba experience of helping schizophrenic people to get over under Jackie Schiff, who worked with Dr. Eric Byrne. And I have seen a 21 years old guy being put in a crib with a feeding bottle. So these are the things in which we will reparenting. So it is not impossible to change the preconceived notions of the leaders by using Kaizen. That's what the hypothesis I'm trying to put forward.
Yeah, but we have always had this perpetual difficulty of getting leaders to participate in Kaizen, because to them they go from this status to, you know, the worker status, and that's unacceptable to them. Generally, not all leaders. And so, you know, you're not going to get your preconceptions changed as a leader if you don't participate in Kaizen. You're not going to happen by reading about it. Reading about it might alter a little bit, but not enough. We have something in this country. Oh, go, Catherine.
Well, that was where my question stemmed from, Bob. And I don't remember if it was your slide 15 or 16, but it was beautiful. Brain and heart, mind and heart, anti-Kaizen, mind and heart. In reading those ideas or conditions, if you will, preconceptions, if you will, what I continue to wrestle with are we given those, or are they inherent to humans? And my suspicion currently is that we are given those. And so that is found for me in my experiences in conventional parenting, in conventional education. So what if we didn't take Kaizen out of the human spirit, but we let it flow? Then we wouldn't have to undo what we've done once we get to business. I don't know.
Will you permit me to take a flight from Rhode Island and Missouri to El Paso, Texas? Lani. Yeah, so I'm taking a flight from Rhode Island and Missouri to El Paso, Texas. What's your take on that, Lani?
What's the what?
What's your take on that preconceived notions of the leaders and Kaizen and all what you've listened to?
Oh, I thought you were coming here and we were going to go to Rosa's Cantina.
That I would.
We'll sing Marty Robbins' song all the way over there. Well, my take on it is to Catherine's question. Years ago, I was a CASA, court-appointed special advocate, and we had to go through all kinds of childhood training. And one of the things we learned was that children are incapable of intellectually learning things until they're about 5 or 6 or 7. They learn things by watching and observing and following the models. And like Bob talked, he gave you a list of those models. And they follow those because they think that's what's supposed to happen. And so they get acculturated to those things. Then we get into business, and all of a sudden we have these biases and stuff that came to us naturally. They're absolutely 100% natural, depending upon the culture that you live in. Okay. And we try to intellectually undo them. Well, scientists have proven you cannot intellectually unlearn something that you did not learn intellectually. If you learn something behaviorally, you have to change the behavior. And so for those things to change, what has to happen is people have to go through one of two experiences. Number one, they have to go through what's called an emotionally significant event, where the shit hits the fan and they force themselves to question what's going on, or through deep reflection. And that's one of the reasons, one of the powers of the Toyota production system is they force reflection. They force reflection. Now, people who haven't worked in a Japanese factory may not appreciate that, but it's incredible what they go through. I could tell you some scary stories, but those are the two ways that you fight through those perceptions. And the scary part of it is, depending upon which psychologist you're talking to, whether it's Freud or Jung or Piaget or whomever, they will tell you that probably at least 90% of your personality, which includes your preconceptions and your thoughts and your ideas, are formed before you're 5 years old. And so you're carrying all this baggage around of things that may or may not be appropriate. Okay. But I don't abide by the principle that we have to be taught how to improve. I think that's one of the things that people learn as they're growing up to be improved. Okay. From the time you're toilet trained, you learn how to drop your stuff in this white porcelain box, and your mom says, wonderful, 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 as you're being toilet trained, And so you learn about improvement. You learn about that. And I think people go to work with an improvement attitude. I think it's the work atmosphere that kills the attitude.
Mhm.
They don't have to be retaught it. They have to have the barriers to its implementation removed. Okay.
I would say one thing about, though, the life-altering experiences. For example, a recent one is COVID. We weren't shaking people's hands. Now, what do we do a couple of years later? Shake hands again. The burning platform, which was supposedly the impetus to head down the lean path, forget about it. Ken Lay at Enron said before, when things were good at Enron, we're maximizing shareholder value for investors. When Enron was going bankrupt, quote, he said, quote, we're maximizing value for creditors, unquote. So, the CEO playbook has all of these things that you do, whether you're in business or going out of business. And we saw also with COVID, all these businesses that were so challenged that the lean community thought, oh, now's the opportunity where people would run to lean. They didn't. Some did. And of course, lean businesses did better during the COVID times than others.
Well, but then by your definition, Bob, they're not life altering. They're just temporal, like everything else. They may be instead of being 1 week or 1 day, they may be 2 years or something. But when you return, it's by definition not a life altering event.
Yeah. So what is
I think that
this was the
everybody
so-called
in this room has gone through something that they can remember way back when something changed. The interactions with a person, an accident they had, they fell out of a tree and broke their arm or whatever, and it changed how they behaved from that day forward. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those, and sometimes we have to learn by continually being peppered by life treating us by feeding our mistakes back to our lap. But
in business though, it's immaterial to have these life-altering experience, meaning, with creative destruction, it's okay if the company goes out of business. From a, economist perspective, no problem. They don't worry about who's thrown out of work and the suppliers who are impacted by it and so forth. The survival mentality that remains today still today with Toyota is unique because in American style business, if somebody makes an offer to buy the company at 30% higher share price, it's sold. And if they then take that new property that they bought and close it down, that's okay. Personal life altering business experience is one thing. But in business, what is the life altering experience? There was a Wall Street Journal article a year ago that said it's great when it's now a badge it's a merit badge. It's a good thing when a CEO has gone through a bankruptcy because they're more marketable now that they've gone through bankruptcy. So you can ride the company into the toilet as a CFO and a CEO, and they both come out pretty good.
Hey,
it used to be toxic to be a
for you,
CFO.
if I may, you spent a great deal of time with Masaki Imai, and one of the things I find very little written about in the literature is Kaizen being voluntary. And my experience has been that if it's not voluntary, it really doesn't work. It may work for a short period of time. But did Imai discuss that?
What I spent more than 15 years with Sensei, late Masaki Imai, and he would always. There were two approaches that he did. One is what Bob was saying, the Senjutsu, this thing of he would ask, want to do it? Do it now. And he was very strict about it. And he had to push. Like what Art Byrne told me in one of the interviews that I had, Iwata took a couple of steps and he came back and said, no good. Now, those are the harsh realities that many CEOs don't like to hear. The second part of it is Sensei Masaki Imai always used to encourage humor, laughter, and that's where I sync with Bob and what you are saying, that it becomes voluntary because there's a lot of enjoyment in doing that work. And they keep looking for opportunities. And as Bob and you have been telling us, Kaizen is not a problem-solving tool, and he would always say it's improvement. And it has been said of, I think it was Mark Deluzio who called it healthy dissatisfaction. So that's what he used to always say, that when you see a Muda, you celebrate, and then you look back and look at it and say, Muda, let's change it. So there was always a challenge from one to the other, and there's a lot of encouragement that Sensei Masaki Imai would say. But in the Gamba, he was quite strict. If you want to do it now.
Art Byrne
And,
referred to it as jury duty,
So
which Art Byrne referred to Kaizen participation as jury duty, meaning everybody in the company is going to participate in Kaizen at, at various intervals. You'll be involved with Kaizen. And most people in America don't really like jury duty, but I think you have to advance the thinking and yes, make it fun, make it enjoyable, make it a chance for people to do things that they typically have not done before.
as a matter of fact, Sensei Masaki Imai did say this, that Kaizen being to be done every day by everybody everywhere. But he also said to the West that don't forget that you have the power of innovation. So you mix up both. You have to take that advantage for breakthrough by doing Kaizen as taught, and Enrico Keno can support me because she has been with Sensei Masaki Imai, Iwata, etc., that learn from the works or the way it is developed in Japan, but use the innovation technology that the West is doing. Sync both of it for a greater gain of everybody, the community at large. That's the message that even in the second edition, Sensei Masaki has advocated the same thing, that you got to mix both. You can't, I don't want to use anything else, but answering your question, yes, he was extremely strict in the Gamba, but he did have his sense of humor, and he did tell many of us to enjoy what you are doing and look for improvement. Keep looking for improvement. What we are saying, go to the Gamba and see. He would never say go to the Gamba and see. He said go to the Gamba and observe to see where you can make improvement. That's what I learned from him for over 15 plus years. Does that answer your question, sir?
Thank you.
Question from Augusto, it seems he had raised his hands.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Joe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for. Well, talking about the preconceptions again, I was thinking about our schooling system that I believe it's enhancing, making our preconceptions stronger instead of making our what also Teiichi Ono said to us is to every day challenge our preconceptions. So what I could notice from seeing from people exiting schools or worse business schools, which are I believe they are making they are not making the work that they should do, because as we noticed after COVID, we witnessed the shortage of the raw material that the world witnessed was a perfect bullwhip effect.
Right.
That is something that every business school they teach you how not to do, and it happened. So I believe that 90% of the people that caused this, they were schooled by that. So
It's blame it on JIT, right? That was JIT's problem. The problem with JIT.
Exactly. They are doing that. Exactly.
Yeah.
So going back to my original question, I believe we need to focus on how to teach people but I believe from the early stages, how to be comfortable on challenging their preconceptions, because I believe this is very hard. I must admit it's very hard for myself.
Yeah.
But I admit that sometimes I have very strong preconceptions that I cannot. Sometimes I try to change them, but sometimes I go back and still hold them comfortably. But some people say when you notice that you have a problem, they're halfway to solve it, but still I need to do the halfway to solve it.
This
So
business, sorry.
sorry, yes.
Just business school is heavily weighted towards the whatever is right world. The business school, classical Harvard Business School case study is, whatever is right. And I taught in a business school for 5 years, and most of those courses are whatever is right. And whereas, the science and engineering courses, well, they're a little bit different, substantially different, but there is some of the whatever is right there as well, but certainly not as much as in a business school. When I read that quote from Ono decades ago, you have to destroy daily destruction of your preconception. That always stuck with me, and I never forgot that. And that's what finally I found the time and got all the words together to write the book, A Changed Perspective, to focus in on the preconceptions. I mean, it's scattered throughout my writing, but it was, put together there. Yeah, it is hard, but that's the beauty of Kaizen. It's probably the easiest way to change your preconceptions. In this country, we have a television show called Undercover Boss, which has been replicated in other countries, where the CEO pretends to be, a recently hired worker to work at the place that makes sandwiches. And they spend a week there, and then they interview the CEO afterward, and he's like, "Oh, I had no idea how hard it was to make a sandwich. I had no idea these ingredients were, not delivered on time, and I had no idea the sanitary requirements for making food. I had no idea. I had no idea. I had no idea. No idea. No idea. Knows nothing." And what do? They go back to the office, change this policy, change this procedure, do something different in purchasing, do something different in terms of the gloves or whatever that are used to make it easier for the workers. But it's a television show. That needs to be reality in addition to it. I mean, the television show is a real thing, a real representation of reality. These are real people. But this needs to be reality, and that's why we tried go to the Gemba. I hope you saw my funny little picture the other day on. That's where all the fun is. Ollie liked it. Thank you, Ollie.
Dr. M, you're on mute.
Ollie's on mute. Anyway,
Dr. M,
So
you're on mute.
Dr. Ed, you can't hear you.
To consultants.
There you
at
are.
times. See, yeah, that's what happens to consultants when the CEO is not with them. They get muted. Okay, having said that, sorry for that. I'm sorry. So just a quick round, because this is the end of part 2. And if you want to listen to the leadership that Bob Emiliani is teaching, this is called Speed Leadership. He has covered that in one of the episodes with me. You can just touch on that and sum up what we have done in this episode 2. In the meanwhile, a quick question from Sitang. One thing that you learned from this, Sitang, you got to unmute yourself, unlike me. One thing that you take away from this. Anybody? I just want 3 takeaways from this so that, I can improve myself. Catherine. Unmute us, yeah.
Help me understand what you're asking. Your feedback or feedback for Bob?
Yeah, all what I'm saying is this episode two in two parts. I'm just experimenting with this. Any suggestion from your side how to go further and any takeaways from this?
Well, number one, thank you for the space. It is always a joy to learn from you and Bob. Number two, for me, my learning style, if I don't ask questions while the material is going and engage in understanding real time, it's hard for me to understand. So, sort of questions throughout would be really beneficial for me personally.
Okay. Oli, Philippines.
Yeah, hello. Yes, it's the same. Basically, lots of insights gained from conversation, and it basically justified the current position of Kaizen and what we can do. You know, try storm and all that, as Professor Bob suggested earlier. And I want to get involved in this kind of dialogue, the series of dialogue, just to get to keep the momentum going. But overall, I think this avenue is very useful for us to share ideas, you know, just to get those questions out and try to validate our assumptions. So,
Thanks a lot.
good job,
Andy,
Dr. M.
Andy, Indonesia. Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, like what Bob said, I want a feedback where I can improve on my, because I'm looking for Kaizen to improve. So give me something that where I should improve on this Dr. M's launch. What better can I do?
Actually, firstly, I want to thanks to Mr. Bob. Your lean transformation model is very inspiring and it's so common sense for me. So now I expand it to not my version, but I think I emphasize on the role of every function from at my factory is mill head or director, and then the senior managers above from manager and the division head, and then for my supervisor and engineer function. So the engagement of every function should be reflected on the lean transformation model. I think your approach is very good. I have no more comment or suggestion because it's just very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know whether you were there in episode 1, but there were a lot of suggestions and they wanted more interactions. So that's the reason that I have moved over to part 2 so that we have more interaction. And Bob did recap the first part of it. Any further suggestions that you want so that we can continue with this change of format, whatever you want? You can write to us, tell us right now. I'll leave it to you. Anyway, this is going to be published on LinkedIn. And so give us a comment. Lani, any improvements from episode 1?
I just agreed wholeheartedly with Catherine. I think if you're going through something like this, if people are familiar with it, it's kind of easy to stay pace. But if you get a question along the way, sometimes you're lost, and as things build one on the other, it's almost impossible to catch up. So I think interspersed questions would be a good addition.
Okay. Bob, it's now Bob's show. You can summarize it and end it for us. Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay. Well, let me first thank you, Dr. M, and all the attendees. I appreciate your doing this and your participation and involvement. I just want to go back to what I said in the beginning, how, you know, people are confused about what I do. And how come I'm not writing books all the time about how great lean is? And why am I doing the crazy thing like writing a book like Triumph of Classical Management and Irrational Institutions, Management Mysterium? What else was there? The Aesthetic Compass, The Change Perspective, Workmanship of Leaders. Why are you doing this stuff? This is all a bad message for lean. Well, the purpose of writing these books is to answer the question of why do leaders resist, reject, and ignore aggressive management? Not all, but most. It's so that people become aware of what they're up against so they can do check, act, not just plan, do. And they need to do the check, act part because we realize after 35 years the plan, do isn't working out as planned. I think everybody should be upbeat and optimistic because we now have answers to questions that have gone unanswered for 100 years. It points the way forward. Rather than repeating the mistakes of the past, which we're doomed to do if you don't do the check act. If you are a close student of scientific management and you read what happened in between 1890 and 1930, as I have done, spent decades doing that, it's deja vu all over again in lean times over the last 35 years. I mean, it is incredible how we're just reliving that again, repeating the same mistakes. Despite that, don't lose confidence. Get smarter, understand the past, understand why traditions continue to prevail, understand the preconceptions that inform classical management thinking, get smarter and try new things. I know better than most how difficult this challenge is, but you don't see me giving up, even though there's many times I want to and would like to. But I think that there's still unfinished business, things we have to do to understand the problem better. Now that we know why most leaders resist, reject, or ignore progressive management, the next question is, how do you get more leaders to accept progressive management? And that's going to be a lot of tri-storming to figure that out. And we could have some circumstance that could occur that could accelerate that, which I hope happens in our lifetime. When we practice Kaizen, we practice it with so many constraints. You may be familiar with Mr. Nakau's no's. There's no equipment, no space, no money, no more people, no this and that. We have the same situation for figuring out how to get more leaders to accept classical management. It's a highly constrained situation. So it seems to me Kaizen would be perfect with all these constraints to figure out how to get more leaders involved and accepting of Kaizen and to do the so-called lean transformation. But the problem is individuals likely won't develop solutions, just like when you have individuals in a company, it's hard for them to develop solutions, but when you put them together with a Kaizen team, they develop fantastic solutions. So my expectation in writing these books was that people would get together as Kaizen teams to answer the second question: how do you get more leaders excited and involved with the Kaizen? And that hasn't happened yet. I haven't seen the Kaizen teams put together to do that. And I think it's because most people simply are to do that. They don't want to take it the next step. They have their own status quo that they're satisfied with. And that's repeating the past. Deja vu with scientific management, even though we're better informed now. So stay upbeat, stay optimistic, keep trying. And hopefully we'll see some Kaizen teams working on this problem.
Thanks a lot, Bob. And we just noticed that you got the first time on your website, the artificial intelligence also working there, right?
What thing?
You got the AI on your website.
Oh, yeah. Coming up next is an AI for the books that I've written.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. Looking forward to that. And thank you very much, Bob, and all the invitees. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Professor Bob.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Enjoy the. Yep.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. M.
Thank you, Bob. Thank
Thank
you,
you, Dr. M.
Dr. M.
Yep.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bob, and thank you, Doctor. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lonnie. Bye.